Today we are talking about SMSL DO200. It's a pure DAC, doesn't have headphone output, and SMSL is known for bringing really good products at this price range. So let's see what they have. So starting with the features and support of different formats, etc., I'm going to skip most of that because I know that my viewers are really skilled and they know how to Google and they know how to find the spec sheet. So I'm not going to waste your time. That's important. Yeah, and that was too much probably, but I need to suck up to you guys because, you know, I'm going to ask you to become my patrons. Yeah, so you're great, right? Okay, back to SMSL. So what's maybe interesting to mention is that this DAC has connectivity that's probably richer than you would expect at this price point. Now, optical coaxial and USB, that's what's expected, but having AES EBU and I2S digital inputs is not all that common at this price point, so that's a great addition. So with connectivity being this good in terms of digital inputs, you're not going to be surprised to hear that you have both RCA single-ended and full-grown XLRs as balanced outputs. Okay, I like all of that. In the front, it's a typical SMSL. One knob, it doubles as a button, one small colored display, there's a remote control, everything works just fine and as you would expect. And this being SMSL, you do get tone color options. Play with that, see if you like something or not. I like the pure one, no color. DPLL setting is something that I always turn down to minimum on SMSLs because that way they sound a little bit better and a little bit more spatial, deeper. And that would be all. So let's move to how this SMSL actually sounds. Well, it sounds like a good SMSL at this price point, which is not a bad thing because at this price point, SMSL probably makes the best sounding DACs out of the box. I'm not the only one probably that likes their full warm and lush tonality, their full mid-range and just smooth, I'll say musical. I know that a lot of reviewers don't like word musical, but okay, let's use flowy or liquidy sound that many opponents in this price range simply don't have. They do have details, they do sound fast and nimble and resolving, but they can be a little bit drier and more analytical. Whereas SMSL definitely learned that people want something that sounds full and lush and musical. Here we go again. So it does really sound like that. Bassline is full, but it's well controlled. And mid-range continues to sound really warm. Vocals have a pleasant body and fullness to them. And all the instruments do too. Highs, there's plenty of details there, but I could never say that highs sound sharp or bright. They don't. If anything, they're a little bit darker sounding, a little bit more laid back. But this warmness is not something that will drown the details. If you listen to any recording, you'll hear plenty of space, empty space. And you'll notice that every tone is well separated and pinpointed on the stage. There's plenty of room and space for all those tones to breathe. And the background is dark, so it's a really see-through DAC. But instead of each of those clearly separated and clean tones being really edgy and sharp, those tones are a little bit plump. Just like we like our girls to be mostly fit, but just a little bit juicy, not bony. And I do apologize to bony girls, we love you too. This is not directed against your bodies, but to praise how SMSL sounds. And it's Kim Kardashian of DACs. It has curves. And just listening it in isolation, I couldn't find anything wrong with its sound. It sounds really, really good and pleasant and enjoyable. And I was thinking like, yeah, this is a good stuff, man. I have to compare it immediately to the best competitors out there so I can assess its true worth. But the funny things about that my favorite DACs recently in this price range are actually SMSLs, so I kept those as references. For example, a slightly more affordable SMSL DO100 for $250, I compared these two to find out that DO200 is outperforming 100. It separates instruments better, it arranges more secure, more 3D-like soundstage, and pinpoints everything a little bit better. And the tonality is basically the same, it's very similar, but when you compare them directly, DO100 just sounds a little bit hazier and more congested. Tones just have a tendency to melt into each other a little bit more and not as well separated and as well spaced as DO200 can do. And that's a good sign. That's a sign that DO200 actually is worth its money. It's showing the difference why you are paying a bit more. But then I moved to my all-time favorite around $400 or $500, which is M500 MKII. And wow, this is a tough competitor. Basically, these two sound really similar, but with M500 MKII being a little bit more forward sounding, whereas DO200 is a little bit more laid back. And I'm talking spatially and the way they arrange soundstage. So everything feels a little bit more in your face with M500 MKII. And because of that, vocals do sound kinda bigger and closer to you. Lots of leading instruments too. But with DO200, you feel like there's a little bit deeper soundstage and vocals just took a step back, and so does all the leading instruments and players. And DO200 is maybe just a little bit more laid back dynamically too, but the difference is really small. So if you like that warm tonality, that full tonality, lush sound, full-bodied, palpable sound, both of these DACs are just great. But if you want all of that to be a little bit pushed forward and more in your face, which is also more attractive and maybe will invite you to jump with music a little bit easier, M500 MKII might be a slightly better choice. If you like your music to have more of that depth perception and just to be a little bit more laid back, but with basically all of the same qualities, DO200 is a great choice. Other differences are that M500 MKII is actually a 2-in-1. It has a pretty decent headphone output. That DO200 does not, but in exchange with DO200 you do have AES EBU and I2S inputs that you don't with MKII M500. So if you really only need a DAC, you might as well have one with better connectivity. But if you need a headphone amp and you don't care about these cutting-edge digital inputs, M500 MKII is still your friend. Is there any other reason that SMSL should make this DAC and put it on the market? Well, maybe because of a just form factor. I read in comments that many people just didn't like this squarey, elongated look of M500 MKII. A lot of people actually told me I would like to try it, I would like to listen to it and see why you praised it, but I hate the looks of it. And for you, DO200 is a save from SMSL. So maybe there is a reason in SMSL's mass-producing models after all, because yeah, now instead of ruling the market with one product, they're ruling the market with two very similar products. If some of you maybe wondered how would DO200 compare to more expensive Topping D90LE, I'm not going to go into details because I thoroughly compared D90LE in its own review with M500 MKII. And that comparison would be practically the same for DO200. I feel that D90LE is slightly more dynamic, slightly more resolving and punchier sounding, but it's not that warm and that like soft and naturally musical and just lush as SMSL, but it has its own set of qualities, and I really do like D90LE too. Again, if you want to watch that in detail, go back to that review. So up to $500 now I have two favorite DACs and both of them are SMSL. And I swear to God I'm not on SMSL's playlist. They're just mass-producing DACs, and they're producing good DACs actually, so it's weird. But on the other hand, yeah, like, I don't know, what's the harm? If somebody likes a square-looking DAC with headphone amp, yeah, they have it. If somebody likes more normal-looking DAC without a headphone amp but different set of connectivity behind, yeah, you have that too. It's options. Options are good, right? Except for reviewers. Yeah, I'm tired, man. I'm so tired. Just give me that like if you want, and subscribe, comment. Consider becoming a patron. Yeah, see you next time. Bye.